Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. I am so thrilled to be able to invite Suzy Griswold to our podcast today. Suzy is the founder and leading of Healing Strong. She is an incredible mom and grandma and has so much wisdom to share with people around her own personal cancer journey and just in general, how to better show up for people when they're going through a hard time. And I really believe that Suzy challenges the norms and is really kind of normalizing a new way of approaching cancer. And so I'm so excited to welcome Suzy today. So Suzy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jordan. So good to see you this way.
Great to see you. Suzy, I would love for you, if you don't mind, to share a little bit more about your story. I think it's always very interesting to me to learn about what compels someone to go down a path like this, a path that for some would seem really heavy and challenging. So talk to me a little bit about kind of what led you to this.
Yeah. So I guess what led me to Healing Strong and really how we connected is back in 2009, I was diagnosed with my own cancer, and it was shocking, and I was full of great fear. I come from a big family, and we had 10 of our own family members who had passed away from cancer. 12 had been diagnosed, and so only 2 had survived. My dad and his sister were the only ones who had survived from cancer. So I had seen cancer for so many years be this kind of death sentence for so many of the people that I had loved and grown up with and done life with. And so when I was diagnosed in 2009, I just wanted to do everything I could do to get it out, to have the surgery, do what they recommended. I was thyroid cancer, which is super treatable cancer. And then when they did the radioactive therapy and it showed back up in my lymph nodes after, that's when things took a turn for me. And that was really when just really through much prayer, as I had no idea there was any other way than what was recommended. This was new to me, and my background was health. And but someone sent me a book, Jordan, called Knockout by Suzanne Summers. And because the book was sent by a lady I greatly respected and admired, she was the CEO of the company I worked for at the time. I know I was going to read it. And it was so eye-opening because Suzanne Summers was, sharing with the readers these different alternative approaches to healing cancer, doctors who were doing different things. And so that was really the first thing that introduced me to, wait a minute, in the mainstream, so these were physicians, in the mainstream, people were saying there was a different approach. Interestingly, years before that, I had worked with a cancer research organization that was doing some research on pancreatic cancer alternative medicine or alternative treatment for pancreatic cancer. And so all of that kind of came rushing back to me. And there was one patient that did really well on our little protocol. And he actually did the microbiome or the macrobiotic diet, which was, what was that, right? And of course, we know now that was just very much similar to what I ended up doing. So I did take a different approach to healing after I had done the surgery and the radioactive therapy as well. And then when it showed back up in my lymph nodes, that's when I chose a different route for healing that, was nowhere on my radar. And that is what brought me down the path of starting Healing Strong.
Wow. Such a beautiful story and such a great example of how the smallest gestures can lead to these really life-changing moments. That book and certainly the experience you had with the pancreatic cancer research, I mean, those things in the moment may not feel that significant, yet it led you to this path both to save your own life and then, of course, to inspire this entirely new approach. I'm always fascinated when you look back at your life, kind of all those little moments, those little decisions you make that you don't realize at the moment how big they're going to be in terms of transforming your way of thinking and your way of of helping others. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about kind of what the definition of a holistic approach is. I think there's a lot of connotations
Mm.
there. So how do you describe that to people?
Yeah, that's a great question because there are a lot of different definitions. I mean, well, how we approach holistic healing is we look at rebuilding the body, renewing the soul, and refreshing the spirit. And so combined, those are, that's the approach of addressing the whole person. So, Susie, this body that happened to be diagnosed with cancer, traditional or conventional medicine would say to approach the cancer, you need to do radiation or chemotherapy and surgery. That's the only three approaches to cancer right now is some kind of a chemotherapeutic drug, radiation, or surgery. But when you approach disease differently and you look at the whole person, you look at, my emotions, my soul, let's say is our mind, our will, and our emotions. And all of that plays into our decision making, fear. A great example for me was I came into my diagnosis with so much fear. So much fear about cancer. Was I going to live to see my grandchildren? Was I going to live to see my boys graduate from high school? There was so many things that were creating a fight or flight response, and that impacts healing, very much impacts healing. Bitterness and unforgiveness impacts the body's ability to heal. There's a doctor out there that we had at one of our conferences, and he said that every cell in our body is eavesdropping on our thoughts. That was Dr. Patrick Quillen. Great, great man who's written many books. And I love that so much because when we think about just our cells at the cellular level and what we are not only feeding our physical body, but what are we feeding our soul? What are we putting in our mind? What kind of truths are we sitting on? And especially when you think about, coming into, as an adult, coming into a healing journey, which it's very much been a journey. I don't think we ever arrive and say, okay, I've arrived, I've got it. There's always something that I see that I can work on better, whether it's interpersonal relationships and, really growing in that area. And, just forgiveness. That was a big thing for me in my own, healing journey, is really learning to forgive and let go and not parking my mind in the past, but, learning to, wrap it up, pray and give it to God and move forward. I mean, that was a huge thing. So, and then of course, refreshing my spirit. As I refresh it in God's word. So I believe his word is absolute truth. And so that's what's given me a good scale and balance of things, is really to what does his word say, and how can I redo things, whether it's in my mind or my actions, that will line up with that. So that's our approach and my own personal approach to healing. And sometimes I have to focus more on the physical, and I'm always focusing on the emotional, our soul, my soul. I'm always, looking at that. And then of course, refreshing my spirit daily is important too.
What I love so much about what you're saying is it's so active. Never once when you spoke did you say, I am healed, like past tense. It's like a constant state of healing. You're in a constant state of assessing and evaluating and trying to kind of improve, or at least kind of come to light of what ways you can continue to progress, or to come to light, or to forgive. It's an ongoing process with yourself. And so I just love again, like kind of like the active nature of the word, or the verb rather, of healing, because it is something that's ongoing. And so much that I've heard from cancer survivors is you're never the same. You're never the same. It transforms the way you look at everything. So you really are in a constant state of healing yourself, because now your life is different and you have a different appreciation, and now you want to help others. It just changes everything. So I just wanted to call that out. I'd love to also kind of jump into, I know that I've heard you talk about like firmly believing that healing starts at home.
Yes,
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
absolutely. That's my favorite thing to talk about because, it doesn't matter where a person is in their healing journey, if they are doing conventional treatments or integrative treatments, which is what I did. I did the surgery and I did the radiation, and then um, I didn't do the chemo, but so integrative or holistic, it doesn't matter. It's 90% of, what we're doing, the choices we make. They say that I think we make 30,000 choices a day. And so how you choose to live your day-to-day life out when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? What's the first thing you do and what's the first thing you think of? If your mind goes to, this is a good example, if your mind goes to all the list of to-dos today and begins your day with stress, then how you choose to heal might be reframing those thoughts and starting your day with gratitude. And that's taken a very active, um, uh, intentional effort for me because it doesn't just come natural. So,
Mhm.
it's not always natural. I wake up and I think about gratitude and what I'm grateful for, and prayerful. Sometimes I wake up and it's immediate what I have to do today, and it's a checklist in my head. But that begins the stress hormones. So so that's a choice. What am I going to do next? Am I going to drink water? Am I going to spend some time in the Word? What am I going to do for my next thing? And what am I having for breakfast? I'm either healing strong or healing wrong. Am I going to eat a candy bar and a bag of chips for breakfast, which is what I used to do. I would do a candy bar and a bag of chips. That's what I grew up on in high school. And I didn't do that always, but I there was never any consequences for what I put in my body. I didn't read the labels, and so healing strong at home is this premise that it doesn't matter what you're doing to heal. If you are seeing a conventional doctor, if you're seeing a holistic doctor, or you're just trying to live your life in a preventative manner. Healing strong at home means I choose today to do the best I can do, to be the best person I can be physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that, like you said a few minutes ago, it's just intentional mindset and an intentional effort. And it takes work. So many
Yeah.
of us are not, we just kind of live and exist, and we don't think about these choices impacting our very being. Not most people don't. They don't think about that, especially when you get sick. That now you're just trying to get rid of the tumor. So many people with cancer, it's all about getting rid of the tumor, but they don't realize, wait a minute, I'm in a constant fight or flight response. How can I get rid of that? How can I reframe my thoughts? What are the words I'm speaking over my body, over my mind? What about my kids? What about my spouse? All of those things, you set the tone for your day. And what you do at home really does matter in the healing journey. Healing doesn't happen in the doctor's office. It really doesn't. It may help you, but that's not where it happens.
So to the person that says, wow, this is amazing, but I'm so overwhelmed. How do I start?
Well, I would encourage you to get connected. Just a shameless plug here, but to a Healing Strong group.
Not shameless.
Right. Which is, they're volunteers, peer-to-peer groups that are going through the same thing. So I would say the first thing is, what is it that you feel like you need to start with? Now, when you're faced with cancer, you need to figure out what your game plan is going to be. But in that game plan needs to be, how are you gonna rebuild your body, and what kind of foods you're gonna make. And so finding a protocol there is really important, and getting connected with a Healing Strong group would be a great starting point for that. And I just would begin to, God will recall. I mean, when we spend some time with him, he's so good about just bringing to light those things that we need to work on, and where we are falling short, or things that are going to make the most impact. It could be drinking more water. You probably, most people don't get enough water, so drinking 8-ounce glasses of water a day is a free and easy thing to start. Spending more time outside. Jordan, how many of us just sit behind the computer or are inside all the time when we have sunshine and grass outside and the birds singing, just the free things? Just first of all, start with the free stuff. Start with the more water and being outside. And again, just to preface, if you have cancer, you've got to get pretty aggressive. It's not just something that you can go, well, this week I'm going to drink a little more water this week and I might do a juice a day. Or no, you've got to really figure out what your next step's going to be to address the physical. But also we work with professionals who are helping people to untangle the emotional trauma and emotional things in their life. And I would say that's so important. Find a practitioner or a program that will help you through inner healing. That's not just sitting with a counselor and talking, but who's going to help you work through the inner healing and get you to freedom, to where you're no longer, staking an acre and a claim on what's happened in the past and it continues to come up, but that you can leave that there and turn around and walk forward in freedom. So, inner healing is so important as well. And then refreshing our spirit. God created us for a purpose and a plan, and really putting him first. And what does that look like for people? It looks different, but for me, it's really trying to find where am I in his word, and what are his promises that I can hang on to. The Psalms are a wonderful place to go, and listen to, King David has cried out to him and really hearing what has he said during his own journeys, and playing that over us. What we're hearing changes. It makes a big difference on what we believe, of God and our Heavenly Father, and what we believe about ourselves.
Suzy, I'm also curious, one of the things you said when you were first starting to respond to that question is, you said shamelessly plugging. No, you're not shamelessly plugging Healing Strong. Healing Strong is amazing. We want you to proudly plug Healing Strong. Talk to me in your own words about the power of support within your own family, support within these support groups, support within your own community. What impact in your mind does that have on, frankly, the motivation and the optimism that someone with a cancer diagnosis can now have as they kind of walk through a pretty, treacherous, unknown path?
Let me start with myself. So when I chose to walk away from what was being recommended, my family thought I was crazy, nuts. Even my husband will tell the story too, that, he was afraid for me, but he knew that I must have arrived at this decision well researched. And I did. And he knew that, because I'd wake him up in the middle of the night and say, honey, I got to share this with you. And, so he finally came around, and now, he's our biggest supporter. But, I didn't have the support. I was just kind of swimming upstream, and everyone else was going this direction, and I was heading this way. And so I remember when I would find someone who believed in the power of, I was a vegan for many years during this journey. And so, yeah, I didn't have a lot of vegans. I'm from Texas, grew up on barbecue and mashed potatoes and fried chicken. And, and that we live in the South, the food is great, a lot of gravy. And, so my way of cooking changed dramatically. And I had young kids that I had to cook for still, even in my own, changing my own habits. I still had to cook for them. So I didn't have the support. People wanted to bring me casseroles. They didn't understand that I was juicing 8 to 10 times a day organic vegetables that had to drive an hour to go get, because there weren't very many places who sold organic vegetables during that time. And Hippocrates soup, what is that? And why does it have to be all organic? And, just things like that. Coffee enemas, that was a part of my protocol. And that, people think that is absolutely crazy. But when you learn about what it is and the power of cleansing your liver, which it used to be in the Merck manual, all these things, you're like, wait a minute, there is something to this. And that's certainly where I was, but nobody else was there with me. So I didn't have the support to help me be successful at implementing, which I did, the Gerson therapy, or slightly modified version of the Gerson therapy. And so support for me would have been grand. I mean, it would have been a game changer for me to have a group that I could go to and, just talk about, and also learn from. Our groups. Healing Strong groups are very educational, and they're also very supportive. So, and we're very hands-on. So we do demonstrations, and we help people, not only talk about what's going on, but we want to educate them in the ways that are going to help them to heal strong moving forward, because it's a chore. It's a chore to change 50 plus years of habits, to now address this very serious disease process that's trying to take over our body. So for others now, Jordan, there are a lot of support groups out there, right? There are a lot of cancer support groups, and I'm not saying, any of those are not good. But when you sit around, you talk about your disease, and you don't talk about getting well, what that looks like, but you talk about your disease, you talk about the side effects of the treatments, and all that is it's supportive. People need to share where they're at, but we focus on healing and healing strong. And so we're going to teach you lessons that are going to show you very basic things that you can be doing. And we're going to talk about the emotional healing, and we're going to provide resources for you to do that. And we're going to get together, and we're going to go, do a field trip to the organic, farmers market. And so all of those things are part of our groups, on top of sharing the testimonies and the stories and loving people when we lose someone in our groups too, and we walk through grief. It's that support group to help each other walk through the grief as well. And so it's just a very unique, very important part of the healing process, especially when you are choosing to go a little bit different than perhaps what the doctor's office is telling you to do. And, a good example there too is when you're doing chemo and radiation, they oftentimes will tell you to eat whatever you can get in you. So I know people who go, great, I can get these sugar-packed, power bars and shakes in me. I remember my mom passed away of ovarian cancer, and my dad would go get her these, chocolate milkshakes from, the fast food place down the road, because that's what she could eat. And that's what her cancer cells were calling for too, is that, all of the glucose and sugar, that's what it needs. I mean, our cancer cells absorb that so much faster. So anyway, that's kind of a long answer, but that's what support does.
No, it's a great answer. And I'd love for you to share just a little bit more about what you've been able to successfully drive with Healing Strong. Talk to me. How many support groups are there? Where are you? How many people have been affected? I want you to brag on yourself, which I know is difficult for you, but I think it's really incredible, because I think it shows the strength of the organization, and just how, if someone that is on this journey, that there probably is a support group around you somewhere.
There probably is. And if not, we have online groups. So that's the beauty of what happened during the pandemic is, many of our in-person groups stopped meeting and began meeting online. So while we started as an all in-person, support group, we now have groups online. But we have supported over the years. So we started in 2013, and these groups are just amazing. They're led by beautiful volunteers. Jordan, many of them are cancer thrivers themselves. We have a lot of stage 3 and 4 advanced stage cancer people running these groups. so beautiful. Their experience, think about it. Think
Yeah.
about that. Their experience and what they've been through and overcoming the fear. And so that's the power of these support groups. And we do the training for these groups. We've probably supported over 700 groups in the last 10 years. Well, we haven't been going. The groups haven't been going quite that long, but maybe 9 years. We've supported that many group leaders. These groups meet all over the country. We're in Canada. We're in several international countries. And we want to provide them the curriculum structure that they need. We provide training to each of the group leaders so they are trained, well equipped. They have videos. We have countless teachings. We've partnered with experts in the field. We've done many conferences along the way and recorded those. So you don't even have to be an expert in natural healing to lead a Healing Strong group. We have the curriculum for you. We also have chaplains that are available to support our group leaders as well, because they're getting into the nitty-gritty of their community and ministering and supporting these individuals, these participants. Our groups run about, some are as few as 3 or 4. And we have some that meet and they have 100 in their group every time they come together. So, and they don't want to split up. They're like, no, we don't want to split up. So, they're still meeting in a large group meeting. Some of our groups are blended where they do both in person and online. And they're all different, Jordan. They're so different. We had, can I share a story with you of one of
Please.
our groups? It's so sweet. Her name is Cheryl, and she's up in Canada. And Cheryl has a group that she's been doing. She started for herself. She needed support through her own journey. And so she began meeting with the Healing Strong group with all of her friends and people coming together really as a support to her, but more people are coming. And she ended up getting married recently, and they, it's so precious. Not long after that, a couple of months, we got pictures, and they had taken a lot of their family and friends on an overnight retreat. And I was trying to think, was it right after a wedding, like a honeymoon? I don't know that I have that part of the story right, but this is what they did. They took the group overnight on a retreat, and the kids were eating healthy lentils and loving the soup. What kids do that, right? And they all got up early in the morning, and they had a time of fellowship together, and it was during the sunrise. So they all got, how many of them are up getting a sunrise unless we go on vacation, right? And I just thought about how beautiful she was teaching people to love those simple things of healing just by embracing, a retreat type thing, an overnight retreat with all of her friends from her Healing Strong group. And there's just countless stories of what's happening in these groups that are so unique and individual. In California, they went to a recording of one of the game shows together, and they all had such a great time doing that. Many of them do field trips where they're out at the local farmers market, or they invite speakers to come. And, it's just a matter of wherever they are. A lot of them meet in their homes, and they just sit around and support one another and teach each other how to cook, and, showing them that it doesn't have to be that difficult, because it's intimidating when you go from the standard American diet, which is boxed and canned, to eating healthier and learning how to read the labels and what you throw out. And so it's just a beautiful group system that has just evolved over the last 12 years. And we just couldn't be more proud of our group leaders and all the volunteers that make it happen. We are very small paid staff, and we have about 225 active groups right now that are meeting, that are supporting people all over the world. All over the world. We have an Italian group where the group leader actually translated our participant guide herself with a professional editor she knows, so that her group can have access. It was one thing for her to teach it, but it's another for her group to be able to read through it. So they have the participant guide in Italian, and she's, of course, it's available on our website at no charge. We have Spanish speaking groups that are meeting. We
Wow.
have one other one. This is the last one I'll tell you about, but from California, they're our largest group, have been meeting a long time. And they recently, within the last couple of years, had men come together and say, you know what, we're a bunch of men, and a lot of us have prostate cancer, and we don't like talking about that with others. We want to start our own group. So this group has grown from just a handful of men meeting to, dozens of them are now meeting weekly. They come together weekly, supporting one another. They're there for each other in thick and thin, and they call themselves the Band of Brothers. So,
Oh,
yeah.
it's incredible. And I could tell it's like each of these groups, they're like your children. Like you're so proud to see them grow up and develop and evolve into their own kind of independence and their own personalities. I just think it's so wonderful, and you should be extraordinarily proud of what you've built and the impact that you've had on this community. And again, really transforming and pushing back that on this idea that there's only one way to fight this. And I think it's incredibly admirable. Suzy, where can people find more information on Healing Strong should they want to learn more?
So just go to our website, healingstrong.org, or if you're on Facebook, it's Healing Strong, and then Instagram is Healing Strong Official, I think. But we just really embrace, people that are looking to be participants, or if they want to start their own group, we'd love to help them get started, and then can get all the answers there at Healing Strong.
Wonderful. Well, Suzy, I am so glad we got to do this. It was such a treat, and I know that so many people will be touched by what you've built, inspired by what you've built, and hopefully, again, this touches at least one person that gets connected with one of these groups or feels inspired to learn more or to research on their own, just to push back and find new ways of fighting this terrible disease. And I just, again, thank you for your leadership. We are so grateful to be able to say that we're partners with you, and just thrilled to continue to watch our relationships mature so that your groups can get support, not just from the groups that they meet with online and in person, but also from their community. Again, whether that's money, meals, volunteers, or just simply updating their community. So thank you, and many more conversations to come.
Thank you so much, Jordan. So good. Thank you.